we're just gonna have a little bit of fun. Gonna make a new layer on top of everything. Grab some white. And grab our soft round airbrush and put a nice little reflection as if it's kind of glossy. So just on the bevel over here, and carefully just put a bit of a white glossy reflection. It's just a fun little additional thing to kind of imply a bit of material. Okay. I'm going to take all three, merge them down. And the most important part that I think that you should try to do with your work is to have fun with it. So what I'm going to do is put a little smiley face on each one. Maybe not always smiling. Very cool. Now what you could do is make a new layer, put it beneath everything, grab that airbrush, set it to not black, but let's grab that background color and go halfway to black on that so we get the accurate value for the shadow. And we're just going to put what's called a contact shadow between the cube itself and the ground that it's sitting on. And of course, with this lighting scenario, you'd actually have like a shadow cast like that. But I think that would be for like a different rendering course, because mapping out shadows requires a prerequisite kind of perspective class. Okay, keeping it loose, keeping it fun. I'm not trying to be too accurate here, but we're still not done yet. I want to be still continuing to talk about the whole painterly approach. If we were going to treat this like a illustration, there are a couple things I want to do. When things are in shadow, they don't really need to be sharp. And this is something we'll discover as we look into master painting studies like John Singer Sargent, Sorolla, Zorn. They kind of treat shadows as though they're supporting characters of the things that are being shown in light. So here's stuff that's not really important in terms of like, it doesn't have to be super sharp. And even up here in the highlight, we'll get to that too. Not everything has to be sharp. So I flattened everything down onto one layer. Going to grab that mixer brush, scroll down over here, and pretty much just get all this a little bit blurred, right? It's going to treat it like a little painterly thing. Especially down at the edges. Let's get that all nice and obscured. We'll keep the smiley face sharp. Actually, well, let's grab the airbrush one. Let's get that a little bit blurred. Same thing here, but not as much as the darkest part. But I think if we treat it like that, it will have a nice, fun, painterly effect. Okay. Feel free to be expressive with this and kind of let things go this way, all wild and stuff. And now it kind of brings focus specifically to the top side, which is what we wanted. Now over here, this whole edge is pretty sharp. But what we can do is say, well, within this given composition, do we really want all of it to be in focus and sharp? Or do we want to pick a specific area to be a kind of focal point or highlight area? So let's say we wanted to bring focus to this area. That means everything else doesn't have to be so sharp. So we're going to do the same thing, but not as much. It's going to just carefully soften things up elsewhere. I'll leave some of the edges kind of sharp here and there. And now when we zoom out, we kind of are forced to look at that kind of topside area. Sure, we can go in there and clean it up, which I think I actually will do for a little bit. So I'd say do that same thing for all three of these and see if you can come up with a different way to bring focus, maybe even into the shadows. Blur everything but the shadows. So there are kind of rules, but they can all be broken. Now, if you want to take it one step further, what you can try to do is make a new layer and draw an outline between all the cubes. So like a white outline like this, as if you're kind of painting on the cube, literally a white strip. All right, now we have this kind of fun separation between the colors. But something's not working here, and that is the values in the shadows. So we're going to lock the transparency of the white paint. Going to go halfway to black, but we're going to add a bit of blue on this side, of course, because blue is cooler. Just going to paint that in like that. And then go back to the base and go 25% way to black, but make it a little bit yellow. Now we have a completely new and interesting way to do this exercise. So for the checklist, when you're doing this, you're going to have a cube with 3 different values. And because you have 3 different values for each one, you have 3 different colors, well, hues. And from there, what you'll do is introduce the complementary. So for the red cube, you'll have cyan. For the green cube, you'll have magenta. And for the blue cube, you'll have yellow. And as a result, you'll have so many new colors because of the combinations and shifting to halfway to black and going cooler and warmer. But this exercise will really drive home the idea of warm, cool, shadow, halfway shadow, quarter shadow, in terms of the percentages of how dark you go. As well as understanding where you can control focal points by blurring things the way a painter would. And as I said, you could try this with cylinders by separating it like this. You could try it with spheres, which might be a little bit more challenging because the sides aren't as clearly distinguished. It's more about your understanding of gradation, but you would have to subdivide a sphere as if it was like a pool table ball, cue ball, or whatever that stuff is. So you can do the sphere. You could do that with a cone, but that's pretty much the same thing as a cylinder, just pinched at the top, so it's probably not as necessary. One note I'd like to kind of remind you is that this exercise will teach you the extremes. So this is the actual extremes of each color, like full green, full blue, full magenta, and then their subsequent shadow sides. Most things we paint won't have that much saturation in them. But if you can understand it at an extreme like this, you'll know that there should be some kind of relationship, even if the saturation is not so obvious.